Just because you're getting older and you're aging does not mean you are destined to be a bitch, that you are going to have severe joint pain, and that you are going to become a heifer. Have you started wondering, is it just my age? Is it my freaking hormones? Why does it seem that my hormones are affecting every part of my life? Then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Rebecca Geiger, and I am a neuromuscular massage therapist and health coach, both specializing in helping my clients get out of pain for good. And in today's video, I'm going to go over what common things we blame on our hormones and how our hormones actually are impacting those things, and the things that you can actually do and have control over before you go into considering HRT to fix these problems. Because the reality here is that it's all supplemental and HRT can be very beneficial. However, if you're only relying on that and you're not getting to the root cause and you're not implementing foundational habits, you're never going to actually see the results that you are looking for. There are three main things that I hear us blaming our hormones for all the time. One of them is our mood. You know, snapping at our husband, snapping at the kids, getting irritated, very emotional. I mean, all of that kind of comes with just being a woman, because we do have fluctuating hormones. Our hormones do not stay consistent, and there is an impact. However, that does not mean that we are just destined to have a bad mood, be emotional just because our hormones are changing. And it certainly doesn't mean that just taking one supplement or hormone is going to fix that problem, because you don't just snap for no reason. There are reasons, there are triggers. Now, whether or not people think those are worthy of snapping or being triggers is besides the point, because it is still unique to you and it's still something that is annoying you. For instance, I've been married now for 16 years and together for 22 years. And the thing that irritates me is that my husband continues to put his shoes in the middle of the living room floor. And so yeah, sometimes I kick those shoes, sometimes I throw those shoes, and sometimes I say, can you get your damn shoes out of the living room floor? Because I'm tired of tripping over them. Especially if I have something in my hand and I don't see that they're actually on the floor. That's really annoying. And it's going to be something that I am going to snap about, because I'm just tired of dealing with it. Not because, oh my God, all of a sudden I have the hormones, because ever since we got together, I've been hormoning. My hormones have been cycling, and I have noticed, and I have told him, I said, you know what, for about 3 weeks, it's fine. I just let everything go. But there's a week where I say, I just can't take it. I have tired of dealing with it. Why? Because I don't have the hormones to support my tolerance for the BS. So yes, hormones do affect things. Hormones do impact things, but it's not just like out of nowhere these magical things happen. The other part of like being more emotional and more irritated is that as we get older, we also are taking on a lot more responsibility. If you have kids, if you have aging parents, I currently have both. You know, I'm 41 years old right now, and I have a 3-year-old and a 14-year-old and no one in between. And so it's very challenging to go from being a mom of a teenager to being a mom of a toddler. Sometimes it's very similar, to be honest with you, and other times it is so different that I'm like, feel like I'm two different people. And that creates a bit of stress. And the other thing is, I also have a dad who is too young to be on hospice, too young to be in a nursing home, but he is. And so I have that stress of making sure he is taken care of and going on and checking on him and just being there for him. And all of these things are stressors, and I'm sure you can relate to that. As we get deeper into our career and we climb that ladder, we have more responsibility, more stress on top of dealing with all of that stuff. And the other thing is, like, there are changes going on in our body, and that is creating this level of uncertainty and this level of, you know, moodiness, if you will, and emotional disruption, because frankly, I think it's because we are uneducated on what actually impacts, and so we just get frustrated. But once we start to understand what's going on and why these things are happening, then we can be a bit more secure with where we are and how to go about dealing with it, and ultimately bring down that stress and create less of those reactions. Another thing that I hear a lot of people blaming their hormones on is joint pain. And there is research to suggest a connection between some musculoskeletal issues and perimenopause/menopause, and that change of estrogen and how our hormones are fluctuating and changing and ultimately declining because we are no longer needing to reproduce. It's a very normal part of aging process, and there are some effects. But I think they're missing a big point, which is we were probably misusing, disusing, or overusing that area. For instance, a shoulder issue. That could be due to repetitive strain. I actually had a client, in fact, who worked on an assembly, and she helped with cards, like so greeting cards and things. And so she was constantly doing this motion of moving to the side, to the side, to the side, developed some rotator cuff issues. Oh, is that related to aging? Is that related to hormones? Or is that because for 20 years you're doing this motion? You know, I've talked about this actually in my last video, so I'm not gonna go too far deep into it here, but check that video out to learn more about how joint pain is affected by aging and your hormones, and ultimately what you can do about it. The point is, they're missing the mark and missing the point that, you know, there are other underlying reasons why that you're having that pain when you get older. It's not like I'm just old now, so I'm going to have all these problems, because a lot of people transition seamlessly and seem to have no problems at all. So I think it's a lot more than just the hormone impact. Now, again, I think it's great that we are having more research done on women and we are talking a lot more about hormones, but just like anything else, it goes from one extreme to another. And I'm going to bring it back here in the middle to help you actually be able to change the things that you can change, accept the things that you cannot, and live a great, healthy, pain-free life. And a big one, probably the biggest one that I hear people blaming their hormones on, gaining weight. I'm old now, and so I'm just gaining weight, and that menopause, you know, which is a belly that they say you get when you're, you know, transitioning. And I think it's all BS. Here's the thing. I'm going to talk about in a second, you know, again, of like what's actually impacting these hormones. But just because your hormones are changing does not mean you are guaranteed to gain weight. The bottom line, if you are gaining weight, is you are eating too much. That is just the bottom line. And I don't want to say eating too much or moving too less. Maybe that is the case. Maybe you are moving less now. But the thing is, you can't get around the calorie balance. I don't care which way you slice it and dice it. You can't. If you are consuming more energy than your body is using, you will gain weight, period, end of story. Now, there's a lot of nuances to this and how your body's actually processing those calories, if you're having the right macronutrient breakdown, if, you know, depending on your age, how many calories you actually are consuming, because a lot of times, you know, we try to just get away with doing the same thing when we were younger. We never evolve, we never change based on our season, based on our body's needs. And as we do get older, we require a little bit less calories and we require a lot more protein. And if you're not doing those two things, and now you are moving less and you're more stressed out than ever and not getting enough sleep, all those things are going to impact how your body is processing the calories that you are consuming and its ability to burn fat. So be sure to subscribe if you're not, because in the next video, I am going to talk all about weight loss in your 40s. Like I said, I'm 41 and I have recently dropped 10 pounds, and I did not go on Ozempic, take HRT, or do any other drastic measure. I just honestly got serious about measuring and tracking. And that truly is the key. So let's talk just a little bit about how your hormones actually do affect things as you age and as they start to change. First off, those hormones are changing, like I said, ever since, like, you know, you started your period. You're going to have these fluctuations. You're going to see changes in all of these things throughout the month when you're just regularly cycling. Now, as you start to transition into less and less estrogen, because again, our bodies don't need that to, you know, don't need to reproduce anymore, and our bodies stop that process, then you'll see more of those changes. But the truth is, those are happening kind of all the time. And so when you're younger and you haven't actually hit perimenopause or menopause yet, you can start doing these same habits and start tracking your symptoms and seeing what unique patterns you have to ultimately set you up for success later on. But let's talk about just a few of the changes that actually are impacted with the change of the hormones. So progesterone does impact your mood, and usually you feel better, less anxious when you have more progesterone in your body. So as that starts to decline, you may experience a bit more anxiety than before due to that progesterone. Estrogen. Estrogen changes can impact your inflammation and can impact your laxity in your joints. So the more estrogen, the more lax, the less inflammation. The less estrogen, the more inflammation and more stiffness that you will experience. Now, these things can be offset. So just because this change is happening doesn't mean that you are like deemed to experience this. It just can happen. And there are other things that you can do to support your body from these particular changes. Other things that actually can be impacted by the hormonal changes, and again, this happens throughout the month of a regular cycling person and someone who is in perimenopause and menopause. But the things that can be affected are obviously your mood, which we talked about. It can change your appetite and the repair processes. So these things are very common, very normal. This is what happens as just a woman. This is our rhythm. This is something that we flow with. No pun intended, or pun intended, because it's normal and fine and great, and it's a wonderful thing that shows that we are healthy and it's a normal process. But just because those hormones are changing, just because we may experience these things, does not mean that it's simply the hormones' fault. So what I teach my clients is to notice what their unique patterns are. So they are educated a bit more in detail about what the potential, not guaranteed, potential effects could be, to give them an idea of things to look for. But ultimately, they will determine what their unique patterns are, and they will find out that maybe what is common they don't experience, or what they are experiencing is actually more impacted by what they're eating and their movement choices versus the actual hormone fluctuation. So there's this vicious cycle that can arise when you are only looking at your hormones impacting your body and you're not looking at the lifestyle impact on your hormones. Because there are several things that you can do through lifestyle, and that honestly we should be doing just for general health and to have a pain-free life, that can impact our hormones positively. And I would argue that you would want to do these things before you go on HRT, because HRT is all symptom led. And when you get your initial dosage, guess what? It's going to change based on your symptoms. It's not like you go in, you get a dosage, and then you never see your practitioner again and everything's hunky-dory there. No, it's going to be another process, a trial and error, figuring out what works right for you. So I would suggest, and I think it's best, to create the foundational habits first. Control the things you can actually control. Change the things that are within your control and ability and the lifestyle that you actually want. What are you willing to change, and what are you willing to do to improve that? And then from there, that's your baseline. Then you can supplement with HRT and other supplements and things of that nature as well. Let's talk just a little bit about these lifestyle factors that actually impact your hormones. And so first thing we'll talk about is your nutrition, your diet. So things that you can do, number one is honestly balancing your blood sugar. In the hierarchy of hormones, insulin is number one. And if you can balance your hormones and balance the insulin glucagon, which is what's going on with blood sugar in your body, balancing that blood sugar balances your insulin and glucagon, then you will have a very good ripple effect on the rest of your hormones. Typically speaking, if one hormone is off, they all are off in some way because they all are impacted. And the very basic thing that you can do is make sure that all of your meals are balanced and you don't have super high blood sugar spikes, and that you are fueling your body properly around workouts and based on your activity level and your age and your specific needs. And to be able to balance that blood sugar, that will help to balance and stabilize your hormones. Because if insulin's off, cortisol's off. If cortisol's off, then your thyroid is off. If your thyroid's off, your sex hormones. And all of the continuous things happen, So that's the basic number one thing that you can do to impact your hormones. The other thing is exercise. And I know this kind of probably seems so basic. Like, we all know that we should exercise, but there's so many of us that don't, or aren't doing it properly, aren't getting as much as we actually need, or are avoiding certain exercises like cardio, or like weightlifting, or like, Pilates or flexibility or mobility training because, I don't know, we don't think we need to, we don't have enough time, we don't want to. I don't know. It's not a priority. One of those reasons. And so it's really important to balance all of that. Exercise alone can impact your blood sugar. Everything can kind of come back to blood sugar in a bit, because when you exercise, you are actually utilizing the blood sugar and getting it out of your bloodstream and putting it into your muscles to use your muscles to exercise. So that all helps. Then exercise also decreasing your cortisol. It's initially increasing your cortisol, which is a stress hormone, but over time, it makes you more resilient to stress and therefore not continuously releasing the cortisol. Cortisol is actually a good hormone. It's a good thing, but you don't want it in excess. You don't want it to constantly be pumping out of your body. All that's impacted through your blood sugar. High stress can actually increase your blood sugar. So moving on to our next thing is actually lowering your stress. You cannot eliminate all of your stress, but there's probably several things that you are doing or consuming or involving yourself in that you probably don't need to lower your stress. And the other part of that is to actually create the resilience to deal with the stress, which is what exercise does, and eating a balanced diet, right? Also, we can talk about quality of sleep. And I know it's hard. I mean, I still, having a 3-year-old, if she wakes up in the middle of the night, I wake up in the middle of the night. Like, it's hard to get that quality of sleep, but you have to prioritize it. I do believe that if you're not prioritizing your sleep, you're definitely not getting enough. And what is enough, again, is different for each person. And that actually changes as we age too. We need a little bit less sleep as we get older. Another important thing that you can do to help balance your hormones is to get regular blood work. And I don't mean just checking your hormone status, because some of the hormones, there isn't really a baseline to say, oh, if your hormone level is at this level, then you're healthy. Like, they do that, especially getting into perimenopause and menopause, there's not a baseline for it. It's all, again, symptom led. However, you can find in your blood work that you're low in vitamin D, that your A1C is up, that you have inflammation. And those things can all contribute to your pain and your hormones being unbalanced. And so it's very important to have that work checked regularly, make implementations, and then check again to see what's actually working. Another thing that you can do is then supplement. So these are foundational things that you can do. Control what you can, supplement what you need to supplement. And when you go get your blood work and see maybe that it's vitamin D that you're low in, supplement right away with vitamin D. Maybe you check your B vitamins and that's low, magnesium, whatever, calcium. Check these levels, supplement right away with the things that are low. Then incrementally, you can add different supplements like creatine, fish oil, ashwagandha, and HRT. And then you can, again, track your symptoms and see how you're feeling and what's going on to get those best results that you want long term, and make this transition seamless and graceful and continue honoring your body. Because here's the thing, just because you're getting older and you're aging does not mean you are destined to be a bitch, that you are going to have severe joint pain, and that you are going to become a heifer, okay? That does not always happen when you get older. Now it can if you decide to say, F it, I don't care, I'm just getting older and I'm not going to worry about it. Because every single person that I have heard say that, I don't care, F it, the next time I see them, they are at least 10 pounds heavier. And that is not good, because they just decide to not care and realize that actually what they were doing was at least maintaining something. So don't believe that it's just your hormones. It's not. HRT may be beneficial for you, but it's not the singular solution. And you really need to not believe it and trust your body, honor your body, listen to your body, work with your body, meet your body where it's at. And I promise you, the empowerment that you're going to get when you make these incremental changes, it's going to be priceless, and you are going to feel better than you did probably in your 20s. Thank you so much for letting me share with you why it's probably not just your hormones' fault and what you can do about it. Like I said, if you're interested more in learning about the joint pain and how your hormones are affecting your joint pain, be sure to watch this video and then stay tuned for our next video all about weight loss over 40 and how your hormones can affect that. And I'm going to share with you how I've lost weight and how I'm keeping it off and how you can do the same. Thank you. Please subscribe and I'll see you next time.